Hi, buenas tardes. Thank you once again for joining us, Yuyi. My name is Francisco Lopez. I am the team lead for a grant program we have here in the Office of English Language Acquisition, OELA. Specifically, we work with equipping teachers to get certified, among many other things, but really our focus in these past years has been bilingualism and bilingual education, and we all know that that comes in so many different ways. So we want to thank you for your time, and welcome you to our chat. I guess I'll just start off with the big question. Maybe the story and what author, in particular, an author of bilingual books.
I Hi. I'm gonna say hi right now, and for a moment, your question got cut, but I understand that you are asking me if there were any particular authors, bilingual authors, that uh, caused an impression on me. Yes, Juan Felipe Herrera is a poet. He makes some marvelous books. He's an author, and his book, The Singing of the Doves, El Canto de las Palomas, is possibly the first book that I remember seeing as a bilingual book in the library. And for me, it opened up a whole world, because before that, I came to the United States. I didn't know books like the ones that you find at the libraries in the United States. And my first big impression was to find a place where you could just take those books from the shelves. But after that, the next really big impression was to see books that were created for and by people like me, who spoke Spanish, or that came from different places like Mexico, like I did as well, or Central and South America. And to that point, I had not have, um, I just have never seen that people from the United States could represent, or anywhere in the world that could represent the life and the experiences that people who spoke Espanol, or lived like my family did. I had never seen it before. And Juan
Mhm.
Felipe and his book was one of the first ones that I saw, and I follow his work now uh, um, all the time. And he's only one of them. He might be had been the first one for me, but after that, I took time to get to know all the other ones around.
How old were you when you were, I mean, you must have been
Yeah,
a child.
no, I was an adult.
No? Oh, you were an adult. Oh, I
I
see.
was an
Okay.
adult, yeah, and I was a new mother with a baby.
Okay.
So we were exploring the library
Hmm.
together. And just as he was opening up his eyes to this world, I was also opening up my eyes to that
Right.
world. So I was like 25 years old.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And what was that journey like for you to start writing? What was that creative process like? And was it always a bilingual approach, or did you maybe at some point think it should be more Spanish or more English? How did you handle that
Yeah,
dynamic?
that's a great question. When I started, I was just copying the books that I was seeing at the library. And I realized that if I wanted to make picture books, I can draw something and put a few words next to them. But I didn't speak English. So I was writing my stories in Espanol, and I was taking from my experiences. Like, I will write something about my baby going back to Mexico. We couldn't go back to Mexico at the time, and going back to Mexico and visiting my family, like in this magical trip, or the way that
Mm.
he ate. And so I was putting those experiences in Spanish, because that was the language that I spoke. But then I was living with my mother-in-law, and she only spoke English. And she saw that I was making these books. I was just making them there at home, like I'd grab a few pieces of paper and try to emulate what I was seeing in picture books. And she thought that they could make a good present for grandpa and grandma who were in Iowa and didn't speak any Spanish either. So she put like that bug in me that maybe if I started to translate it, it started a journey for me to learn how to do it in English. And nowadays, like I even took some classes, and then I started my process of writing creatively started in English, because that were the classes that I was taking, and my first efforts of writing a narrative were in English. So then my stories uh, began with English, but I could never leave my Spanish behind. Like I cannot do it even now, because um, for me to communicate, I need both languages. My English is never gonna be enough. So then I started introducing some words or leaving some words that either I loved or I felt like I really needed it. So um, it kind of naturally just moved in that way, that from the very beginning I was using both languages, and I have never really done like a mirror translation
Mhm.
of one or the other, but I'm always using them as like each of them supports each the other, just like if they were siblings, and rather than having to choose one or another, it's like no, both languages are important and they are going to have their space.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. I think, I mean, I feel that way too. I think I grew up with along the border. My parents are Mexican, so I understand the idea of holding on to both and really, giving them both their space, because sometimes you can express a feeling better
Mhm.
than in one language versus the other. So a question we have a model right now, and being bilingual is a superpower.
Oh yeah.
And we have t-shirts and we've got the whole thing. So what would that mean to you? I mean, you've made reference to it already, but how is bilingualism a superpower in your life?
When I think about that, was the beginning, it was being bilingual. It was the beginning of starting to realize first of our value. And uh, when I went to the United States, I still had that mentality that I was going to an upper place, to a place where I had to be more than I was, which meant that speaking only Spanish made me not enough. And I had to go over that thought. I had to understand that even if I didn't speak English, I was intelligent enough, I was smart enough, I was capable and valuable enough. Um, but yes, it took some time. And then once I was able to utilize both languages, I felt like it was just a door to realize that there are many ways for us to communicate. And it is not only like with Spanish or with English, but like when I make books, one other languages that I use are the images, are the colors, are the positioning, the composition of things that tell you how a story, what's happening in the story. So I think that what it has done, at least to me, is to realize that I am never, ever only one language. I'm not even only two languages. I am multilingual, and that's a discovery that has taken me some time, but that I'm following and trying to realize how many other languages I understand. Do I speak like the birds? Do I speak like, how can I make myself communicate in other ways that I have not realized before? That, like you say, their power was there, and I think the superpower is more like the realization, is that awareness. And so it can be only one language, and still, because it's my mother language, it doesn't make me less valuable or less powerful. So the awareness of the language being that tool that we can use for anything we want, especially for connecting to others. I think that's what makes it a superpower.
Thank you for that. I think so much of being able to speak is being able to listen, right? First. And so, in what ways can your books and your bilingual books in general be support to parents find themselves in that same situation, right? Or someone who wants their child to be bilingual, at least. How could your books help for that aim for their children?
Yeah, well, like I was mentioning before, my books are never only English, but they are also never just Spanish either. And I think that what I like to think of when I work there is that I put a piece of my heart in there, and a piece of my heart that hopefully will be sensed by the reader, in this case the parents, and especially if parents are have the connection, or they find themselves connected, whether it is to the words, but also to the stories, to the narrative, to the elements of the illustration, to the colors. I hope that then they will um, be present more than anything else. Um, I'm always inviting parents to be co-readers with children. Fortunately, I make picture books, and a lot of picture books are a great invitation for parents to sit with their children, to put them in their laps or next to them and read the story. Also, the invitation is not only to be curious about the words, because yes, I try to put the words in context, and also connected to the images, so that even if you don't understand the word, you might understand the story, because that's a process that I went
Mhm.
through when I was also learning English. And then I love putting like hidden things or mysteries or reference to things that are culturally relevant. I have, for example, I have a book that I illustrated. I didn't write this book, but I illustrated for Marisa Montes, who was really great at making bilingual books and at using like English and Spanish like intertwined. And in that book, it was a Halloween book, but then it's given to illustrate to a Mexican woman like me. And then, so I brought all my references for the Day of the Dead, and
Mhm.
brought my references from those spooky things that I used to be afraid when I was a little kid. And so if you look further, you see that there are some characters like Cantinflas or José Ortiz de Domínguez, or some of those characters that are already dead, so they can be ghosts now, and they are part of the story, and they are part of the storytelling as well. So what I always like to bring, and I hope that I accomplish that, is to bring something that is significant for the reader, for whether it is a parent or it is a child. So then maybe the child will not understand the reference because he is only 5 years old, but us who had had experience of living in the culture, in the Latinx culture, then we might understand some of the winks
Mhm.
the illustrations and in the story. And with that, my hope is to connect, so that then the experience of reading, whether it is in even in a language that we don't quite understand, it's still a beautiful and pleasurable experience, because we are doing it together and we risk it. I think that maybe without being like absolutely like saying it or writing it, I'm hoping it that 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 the parents and the readers are gonna feel are gonna risk it to try even to read a story with words that we don't completely understand, but we dive into it because especially the illustrations are inviting you to come and join us.
Right. Yeah, I love the Cantinflas reference. I have to check that out because I would pick up on it. Like I had my mom and my dad would watch that in the background, right? And black and white, it's not gonna really captivate me. But if I saw it in a book, it would very be much inviting. So
That's right. There are a
that's great.
couple of them, so let me know if you find them.
Okay. Um, so how many books have you written and published so far?
I lost my count now, but there
Okay.
are like around 16,
Okay.
17, probably. Both books that I have written and illustrated, and some books that I have illustrated for other authors.
Okay. What is did you learn how to illustrate at a younger age, or how did that skill come about?
Now, I always love drawing.
Okay.
When since I was very little, my mom kept some of the drawings that I was making when I was 3 years old. I always like it, but I never had our materials to create anything beyond just like color pencil or pencils only. Um, and it wasn't until I came to the United States and I saw the picture books that I thought that I would love to make illustrations like the ones I saw in the books. So being there, I had an opportunity for the first time to buy me a set of brushes and some acrylic paints. Uh, I didn't know how to paint in with any materials, so I just chose acrylics and I started practicing there at the kitchen table. Like after we ate, had dinner, I will clear the table or and sit and try to copy. I'm very good at copying. And not because what I copy looks like what I'm seeing, but because it brings me to this process of being creative.
Yeah.
So and I practice there on my drawing table, but that was because I was very motivated. I wanted to be able to make books like the ones I saw at the public library.
Right, right. That's great. And what would you say to somebody who is thinking of writing a book?
Wow. Well, it's like, at least for me, it was like going to school all over again. So it is a big process. There is a lot to learn, but I think that the only way, I mean, at least for me, the only way I see going through it is because it's joyful, because you love it. Otherwise, like at the end, you learn how to do it and you cannot sell your story, or you sell your story, but it earns you no money. If that
Mhm.
was the reason why, I think it will be painful and torturous. But if you are doing it because you really want to tell that story and you want to do it with the format of the book or the picture book, especially books for children, then there is a lot to learn. And that learning is I can say from my point of view is joyful, is amazing to discover like how children learned, how they feel connected to stories, how they love repetition, what are those things that connect with them depending the age they are at, what how is their attention, and what are those things that will grab them. I think that we need to learn a little bit of that, and then we in within that base we can let ourselves be the artists that we want to be, and go and write and let our stories come out of us,
Mhm.
and not be too critical, because at the beginning our stories are very, very fragile, but we need to take care of them just like we will take care of a baby. uh, we let it out, we take care of it, and we revise it and revise it and revise it. The knowledge that we need to revise it is something that we can learn, like I learned it from other books, from asking people, from going to conferences. There are many places where we can learn like the techniques, how to structure a book for children. But I think that the part that we can never go and learn anywhere else is that joy and that passion that we can feel for bringing a story out and making it the best story that we can make. So I will suggest, and for anybody who wants to be a writer or make picture books, is to just sit with a piece of paper in front of you and let it come out. Don't be too hard. If we start comparing ourselves with the writing or the illustrations that other artists who have been practicing a lot,
Mm-hmm.
if we compare ourselves with them, we are gonna feel discouraged. Don't do
Mm-hmm.
that. We have our own journey, and our journey will take us to that place, but we need to start somewhere. And at the beginning, it might not look that great, but if we practice and practice and keep writing and writing, things will start taking shape. Usually also is like, okay, where am I gonna find a good story? Most good stories are inside of us. We have already lived them. We have already heard them. We have a connection with them. And then when we see something that keep us staring, um, recognize that we are seeing ourselves in a mirror. If we see a book that you love, that you like, that might give you a direction. It might shed a light to you. Like, that's a theme. That's the kind of stories that I like. And copying, I recommend copying because it's not like you are gonna steal somebody else's work, and you're gonna make it yours and publish it. In reality, is more like you copy to realize what are those things that other person that you admire, what are those things that you are following, that you are also good at, that you like. And then once you discover your own strength, then you will make your own story. So I will not be afraid of copying at first, just as a method of learning, as
Right.
part of the process. Eventually your own stories will come.
So I'm intrigued with that point. I was a literature major in college, so I was taught to sometimes think the way an author thinks,
Mm,
and why, every detail does matter, right? If the author says there's a green dress, there's a reason why that dress is green, right?
yes.
So all of those pieces, just to ask you, how much of your books are your own stories, are your own lived experiences? I mean, you say, to let the story take its own shape, but the spirit of the story, right? Like, how do you look for those pieces of your life to inspire you to create something? I mean, is it just a core of your memory? Is it something you see currently? How do you
Yeah.
structure that?
Yeah, it is all those things. Like, I can, in my case, I can never write a story that I have not experienced, that I have
Okay.
not. And for example, my first book, my very first book, I I had never written anything creatively. But I was trying my hand on making a story, and I ended up with a story about a grandmother who wakes up one morning and finds a skeleton waiting for her at her door. And I made that story because I took a course. I went to a class, and they say we are gonna make a concept book. So you can make a book about counting, or an ABC book, or big and small, just concepts. And then I thought I wanted to make a counting book, but I wanted to make it something that resonated with me. And what were those things that were happening at the time with me is that I was extremely homesick. I
Hmm.
was still missing my family, my friends, the food, the colors. And I was living in San Francisco in a beige apartment. And what I did with that book is to bring all those things that I missed, that I didn't have with me anymore, but I had them on the page. I had them on the illustrations that I was making. And it might be a story that is inspired in like in the class I took, and also is inspired, for example, in the trickster stories that I've heard many times here in Mexico, about how uh, regular people like you or me can defeat incredible beings like death.
Right.
And bringing all those things together is like, it's never only one thing. it is, at least in my case, I understand that making a book is like our dreaming. You know, there is a part
Right.
of you that brings something from your childhood or a memory, something that was happened to you a long time ago, and then you bring something that is in your mind right now that is you are curious about or you are preoccupied about, and you bring many things, and then the story starts taking shape. So it does take shape, but it's not even though it feels like magic sometimes, it's actually the fruit of the of work, of labor, of being there present and capturing even our own thoughts. And like at the beginning, like I say, usually things don't look so good. Even if it was a good memory or a good experience, it might not look that great, but it will take work.
Is there a favorite character or a story from your books that's special to you? I mean,
Oh,
I'm sure they all are, but is there one that you think about most often?
yes, I like them all, but I like the characters in the book Niño Wrestles the World. I like them a lot. This is a child with his two little sisters. They are the three of them are wrestlers, and they are wrestling with their fears. Um, and in this book, I put the the other wrestlers are characters like La Llorona and the extraterrestrial, the Olmec head, and just beings that when I was a child, I was very afraid of. So that group of characters in the book Niño Rosas the World is meaningful to me because it also allowed me to play with my own fears and to explore them, to get to know them better, to recognize them as part of the neighborhood, and realize that usually when we are afraid of something, of someone, is because we don't know her or him. And what will happen if instead of that we play with them, we wrestle but we play with them.
Wow, yeah, that's fascinating. So you did balance. I mean, I was going to ask how you balance entertaining children with the
Mm.
very important themes of life, right? Because it's, I'm sure, a delicate balance. And you mentioned children like repetition. You mentioned those, I guess, maybe tactics that you can use to
Yeah,
develop and to write the story.
that's right. I feel like I have a big responsibility when I'm writing a book for children. You know, I cannot be careless.
Mhm.
um and while I want to follow my own artistic spirit, that might have a place in the process, but then there will be a part of the process in which I'm going to be very careful that I'm not doing something that is going to destroy a child, that is going to, like, I'm going to put things that are um, 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 frightening, and I'm not going to leave the child with the fright that those
Mhm.
characters are going might cause them. So I'm always careful to bring those other elements that we need, especially if we are growing up. We shall care, we shall hope, we shall like the even the promise that us as adults, we are gonna do something to shield them from danger and from pain. So yeah, all those things, I have a space for all of them. If I am gonna leave a story just to entertain someone, it is not a complete story for me. It needs to bring something that lets the child experience their own process of growing up in a space that is safe. I always want books and the books that I make to be a safe space where children can experience life, my I don't know, make mistakes or be in a place that that is unknown for them, but that it is safe to be there, because at the end you are always going to be embraced, even by the story or by me or by the promise of the culture and the person who brings that book to you.
Yeah. Is there one challenging story that you would say is rises to the top? Like this was the hardest thing to write, or a story that you were told by others, maybe you need to change this, or is there a challenge that you could share with us
Yeah.
that you've
Well,
had as an author?
uh, like I feel like almost all of them had challenges. Like the story I was telling you, my first book, um, I had a hard time trying to sell that story, because most publishers that I send them to, all of them practically, is that like at the very end they say like, this story is scary, it has a skeleton in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that showed me just like how when editors are not familiar with the culture, then just the appearance of a skeleton might be something that is difficult for them to connect with. And when they told me we are not able to see to sell this book, I know they are right. They weren't going to be able to sell this book because they didn't have a connection with, they didn't know it. But I think that the, the more books that I make is like the more difficult it becomes, because books open a conscious also in the person and the people who are making those books. At least they are opening consciousness in me as well. Like what I was mentioning, how can I be caring enough not to just feel like I'm a published author and I'm gonna make another book, but how can this book be something that will accompany children in their journey? And children are not only experiencing cute and safe journeys. So my last book, Bright Star, it is a book about immigration, and it's a book that I made when we saw it in the news and in social media that caravans of people were coming to the borderlands and they were trying to enter the United States. I decided I was going to make a story about that, but how do you make a story about such a thing? And I use something that is another tool that we all use when we are telling stories, which is the metaphor. So when we have a difficulty of explaining something just the way it is, we can always use a metaphor. And in this case, what I did is I used a character that is a deer, a farm with her, a baby deer with her mother, and they are crossing the borderlands just like many animals do. And through the experience of this baby and being separated from her mother, um, uh, and bringing uh, it is hard, like it was hard for me to make it like, how do I not lie with this story and just like, oh, here is the mom back, and everything
Yeah.
was all a dream. I'm not gonna lie to children, but I'm always gonna let them know, which is I think what I try to do with Bright Star. I'm gonna let them know that they are not alone, that
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, they are a bright star inside our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And we as adults, we will make sure that we do everything in our power to to make sure that those children are safe. And I think it's a big promise. I don't know if we are really um, all the way up there doing everything we can, but at least I hope that, again, this book is an invitation for
Yeah.
adults to
Right.
do what we need to do, and for children to let them know that they are so valuable to us, no matter who they are or where they come from or where they are going to.
That's beautiful. I think one of the things that we work towards is making sure that educators, teachers are right there, helping and making sure that they're using all of the latest, approaches to bilingualism in classrooms. Have you connected with teachers or educators who are using your books in innovative ways? And what do they tell you about the impact in the classroom?
Yeah, well, I receive a lot of um, letters with, especially with the book Dreamers.
Mhm.
I receive a lot of uh, drawings or teachers who tell me, or even when I have gone to do a presentation and they said, we had this child who just recently came and we haven't heard a word from her. And now she's just because she was at the presentation and she kept raising her hand and asking questions. So like I didn't know it, but then the teachers came and told me, and it has happened more than a couple of times, when they say this child, we haven't heard a word from her, and now we can stop. We cannot stop her. And a lot of adults tell me about just how children are feeling. I guess I hope that it is that safe space that I'm hoping to create for them, so that where they know that they are valuable and that they don't have to go through the same experience like many other of us who felt that we were not good enough
No.
to be part of a country like the United States.
I'm sure it's working. And I think those are just the ones that reach out to you. I'm sure it's having a much bigger effect. So thank you for that. At this point, we were gonna ask you to read a short paragraph or a few sentences of any of your work, that one that you feel is a key piece or message.
Sure. So I'm gonna share my screen because I wanna read you. Let's see.
Mhm.
I wanna read from this. Let me see if I can play. This is from the book Dreamers, and this is towards the end of the story. So we've seen this mother with her child. This story is inspired in my own immigrant story. And we've seen her going through a new place with no language and making lots of mistakes too. And then one day finding her way to the public library, like it happened to me, and realizing and making books a place of growing and learning. And I like this book because I struggle a lot with this part of the book when I was writing it, and it says they are making like their own book, and after the journey it says someday we will become something we haven't even yet imagined, but right now we are stories. We are two languages. We are lucha. We are resilience. We are hope. We are dreamers, soñadores of the world. We are love, amor, love. And in this paragraph, um, I knew that I wanted to make it very, very clear and very important that even though we are still becoming who we are, and we are constantly transforming ourselves, no one who comes from another place, from another country, is incomplete. It is already wholesome. And I think that for me, especially with adults working with children, caretakers and teachers, I think this is an important part for me to always share with them, because sometimes with very good intentions, teachers might think um, that if a child has come from Mexico, Central or South America, and now they are in the United States, finally their story has realized. You know,
Mhm.
it's almost like that's the resolution of their story, when in reality it's just the beginning. You know, when a child comes from a different country, doesn't speak the language, and they are just in the journey of shining. But it's not because they don't have their light to shine. It's because they need the safe space to be everything they already are. They don't need to become something they are not already. When we come from our countries, we are already valuable, beautiful, smart, wholesome. We have our own language we communicate with. And learning English, yes, it will be part of our superpower, but our power is already with us. We have ways of saying things, of learning. We are very, very smart in our own languages, and we don't need to become something we are not. We are already
Yeah.
everything anyone might want, to be well received.
Mhm.
When we come to places like the United States, um, we are already a gift. We don't need to beg to be humanized, to be, for our value to be seen, or especially if not for our value to be transformed. We don't need to be like anybody else to be already everything we can be. And I hope that anyone in the United States who will receive a child in their classroom, in their library, who comes from another place, from another country, that they welcome her, him, they, as the beautiful, wholesome thing, being that they already are. We don't need to transform them. We just need to take care of them so that they can be everything they already are. Because I don't know if that happened to you, but I encounter all the time this idea that, oh, now that you're in the United States, you know,
Mhm.
now you can be the great person you are supposed to be. We already are,
Mhm.
but
Right.
hopefully the United States will welcome us, in safe ways, so that we don't have to worry for surviving, and we can then just occupy ourselves on shining.
Right. I think that, thank you. That's a really powerful approach. You know, I think we all forget sometimes as a narrative in the country that there are already stories within us. There are already lived experiences that need to be shared, that, you know, then that's how you said, I think earlier you said, how do I combat the fear of the stranger? Right. Well, by talking to the stranger, by playing with the stranger, by wrestling with them. So, um, very, very powerful. So thank you. Thank you for that. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our audience or to anyone, you know, interested in your literature?
Well, I will invite, um everyone to read stories, to read my books, to read other people's books, but always to see them as invitations and as mirrors. um I don't want to make books so that everybody comes and admires something that is, separated from them. When we see a book that we love, it is because there is something in that book that we are also, and it's something that we can make too.
Mhm.
Authors are not other people. We are authors. I am an author. You are an author. Everybody who reads a book is an author. And even though it feels really good to know that you have connected, or some reader has connected with my story, I will be even happier to know that it has inspired them to create their own stories. And with that, my invitation is to see every book as a reflection, in which we can all see ourselves, so that we can also go ahead and clear the table in front of you and start creating.
Well, thank you so much. Muchas gracias for your time and for being able to chat with us. So thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.